Greetings. How's everybody doing today? Hopefully you can hear as well as see. It'd be great if somebody gave me a sign out there for just generally anything. But welcome to this week's edition of the Film Club. I think we are up to maybe part 6 of Marshmallow 239. Hello, Dano. Hey, how are you? Hope you're feeling better out of your confinement and being able to breathe some actual fresh air. And hello to whoever else is out there. As I mentioned, we oh my goodness, I actually forgot my list. Hang on a second. Sorry about that. Okay. Apologies for that. Was just kind of grabbing some of these discs off of the shelf upstairs and I left my list up there. Well, anyway, we're all the way up to, we've actually gone all the way through this page and we're onto the back side now. Before I actually, speaking of films in the 70s, hey, Vincent Priceless, good to see you. Thanks for being here. So since we're in the 70s, I thought I would read something out of a book that is kind of a collection of stuff from this awesome guy, Nick Tosches. And if you don't know him, he's kind of a sort of a what they would call an alt journalist back in the day, completely freelance, and basically just got gigs writing for all different kinds of publications and stuff. He's also uh, a novelist of full-length things. There's a amazing biography he wrote of Jerry Lee Lewis. I think I've mentioned that one before, called Hellfire. He wrote a really cool biography of Sonny Liston, who, of course, was the person who Muhammad Ali defeated in the punch that was so fast that you couldn't even see it. That's a whole other thing. And he also wrote an incredible biography of Dean Martin. And Dean Martin doesn't sound like that interesting of a person. A lot of you people might think that, yeah, he was the guy who was just kind of drinky on TV back in the 60s and 70s, made movies with Jerry Lewis. In the 1950s, Lewis and Martin were like a top billed comedic act, with Dean Martin being the crooner, Jerry Lewis being the crack up instigator. So anyway, those are some of his bigger books, but this is a fantastic reader of all different kinds of stuff that he wrote about, and it really runs the gamut. But I was just looking in this the other day, and there was a cool little piece that that he wrote about Hollywood a little bit. The title of this little essay is called When Literary Lights Turn on the TV, and he starts with Faulkner, kind of drifts off, and it's a short thing. Wait, I'm not sure. This is a standalone thing, but anyway, it's about Don Siegel. It's about a meeting he had with Don Siegel. And for those of you who are 70s fans, 70s movies fans, and 60s movies fans, you're going to know Don Siegel is probably one of the more famous things he did was directing the original Dirty Harry with Clint Eastwood. And Clint Eastwood was kind of a protege of Don Siegel's, and Clint Eastwood pretty much learned how to make movies from Don Siegel. So that gives you an idea of what a master Don Siegel was. Anyway, there's a little piece in here about Nick Toch is going to interview Don Siegel in the late 70s, maybe 76 or something like that. 76, mid 70s. So I'll just read this paragraph to you because it's a great insight into two really fantastic personalities, Don Siegel being one and Nick Toches being the other. So it's kind of short, but it's a good little prelude to talking about movies in the 70s. I'm going to preempt the preceding paragraph too because it's not ready for prime time. In the fall of 1976, I had gone to Los Angeles to interview the movie director Don Siegel for Playboy. Siegel, much to my pleasure, turned out to be a knockaround old-timer from whom the superficial mean of Hollywood fell and vanished at the slightest incitement, as it did from his protege Clint Eastwood, who spoke with me at length and leisure during my days with Don Siegel. My experience with Siegel was as misleading as it was gratifying and illuminating, misleading in that it led me to believe that real human souls could be found even in Hollywood. But guys such as Siegel were a dying breed. And in my later dealings with the movie business, I discovered that the hollow men and women who ran it were mackerels rather than sharks they saw themselves to be, and that Hollywood itself, whose commerce in dreams and mediocrity was vaster, more ruinous, and more despicable than any global trade in drugs, was a citadel of fraud meant only to be robbed. So there you have both Don Siegel's and Nick Toches' views on Hollywood. And this is going on 50 years ago at this point, because he wrote that in 1976. Anyway, I will put a link to this book because it's very cool. Might even possibly be in your local library, but I think it's kind of somewhat collectible at this point. I got this from a Half Price Books and it was still $19. So possibly overpriced, but worth every penny. So check this out, you guys, if you can. Never a dull moment in it. So also just the obvious preemption with the YouTube thing, which is please remember to like and subscribe. Helps me get out there in the algorithm, et cetera, et cetera. And I appreciate you guys for being the clickety clickers that you are. So last week, I think we ended with Le Grand Bouffe, which was a cheery little tale about 5 affluent men who decide to eat themselves to death in a leafy suburb of Paris, which they go ahead and do. And so starting up this week, we are going to begin with this whopper of a film, and that is none other than Holy Mountain by the amazing Alejandro Jodorowsky. And this was this was the next movie that he made after El Topo, if you guys are familiar with that. And I'll just read you a little bit of the blurb on the back here. The Holy Mountain, the scandal of the 1973 Cannes Film Festival. Writer-director Alejandro Jodorowsky's flood of sacrilegious imagery and existential symbolism is a spiritual quest for enlightenment pitting illusion against truth. The alchemist, played by Jodorowsky, assembles together a group of people from all walks of life to represent the planets in the solar system. The occult adept's intention is to put his recruits through strange mystical rites and divest them of their worldly baggage before embarking on a long trip to Lotus Island, There they ascend the holy mountain to displace the immortal gods who secretly rule the universe. That's a pretty succinct and well done synopsis of a virtually indescribable film. The visuals in this, as you can see by the cover, are timeless and amazing. Jodorowsky had a big hand in the costuming, the set design. He wrote it, I think shot quite a bit of it, directed it, stars in it, contributed to the score of it. So there's really, and he was also involved in the editing of it. So, I mean, if you want to talk about auteur filmmaking, Jodorowsky is probably one of the peaks of the pyramids of that particular thing, along with people like Herzog. I guess maybe a later person might be possibly Wes Anderson. He's not really in the same school as Jodorowsky or Herzog, but this is fantastic auteur filmmaking. Um, Once again, this was a film that was virtually unavailable to watch when I first found out about it, was reading about it. I think it was actually shown in the film class that I had at Cal Arts in the late 70s, which was a film class taught by a man called Don Levy. And I think he did show the Holy Mountain. If he didn't, he did show El Topo. And that was my first exposure to this, to Jodorowsky as a filmmaker. Of course, I spent the rest of my time, the 70s and 80s, trying to figure out ways to see both El Topo and Holy Mountain because you could only see them at a midnight showing at some kind of repertory cinema. As I've mentioned before, for a lot of the films in the 70s and 80s, you had to wait until they turned up someplace to be able to see, and you had to keep your eye out because if you missed it, there was no going back and checking your history and being able to pull it back out of the time machine to watch again. So this is a really nicely restored Blu-ray of it. I think there's even a 4K of it, although those are kind of astronomical in cost at this point. I'm quite happy with this because they did such a good job that it looks incredible. So if you want a truly mind-bending experience, uh, Holy Mountain is the way to go. Never gets old. There's always something new to discover in it. And just on a quick personal side note, um, in the mid 1990s, while touring with the Melvins, we happened to play a show in Olympia, Washington. And actually, this show became kind of a notorious show because I think it was a so-called quiet show that every once in a while we would have to play because of some kind of really weird circumstance. In Australia, we played one because we played a place that was actually in a hotel. And of course, the promoter didn't tell the guy running the club or whatever, okay, you want to put this show on in your hotel, it's going to be a problem because this is a loud band, which it was. So anyway, we had to play a quiet show, and that was a debacle all of its own. But in Seattle, in Olympia, um, we ended up playing a quiet show for some kind of reason, and then the show became notorious for yet another reason. Anyway, during the afternoon in Olympia, I was walking around. I got some lunch or something, and I saw a flyer on a telephone pole. Once again, this before the interweb. So you had to run across things that were advertised that way. And it was the actual, I think it was the Capitol Theaters where we were going to be playing. And they had a sign saying, Alejandro Jodorowsky at the Capitol Theater today at 2 p.m. um, showing some short films, maybe, I think. I don't think he showed a long one of his features. And he was also giving a lecture, and it was having something to do with University of Washington was putting on that event. And I kind of stared at it in disbelief at my fortune, going, wow, okay, this is happening in like 45 minutes. So I got some lunch and went over there. You could just walk in, and there was uh, Alejandro Jodorowsky at the lectern giving a lecture about a combination of chess and tarot cards and alchemy, and also showing little excerpts. And there wasn't that many people there. There must have been maybe, I would say, 20 or 25 people there. And I stayed for the whole lecture. It was really cool, interesting. He's completely a lucid and interesting person, despite his age. I don't even think he was that old at this time. He's still with us, and I think he might even be possibly in his 90s now. But, and I think he just incredibly made a movie a couple of years ago. So finished his lecture and then said, you know, I would be pleased to sign anything that anybody has and meet anybody if anybody has any questions for me. And he just sat at a table right there on the in the front of the proscenium, and people just lined up, and I think they had people had VHSs and maybe DVDs and albums of soundtracks and things like that. And he was very gracious, very humble. Um, his head had not exploded, and so I was just in the line, and I got to meet him and shake his hand and express my admiration and gratitude for his creative endeavors. And he said, thank you so much, and thanked me for coming. And that was a great little experience, and just another fantastic experience of meeting somebody that you might possibly be fearful to meet, because you don't know what you're going to get whenever you meet people of a certain kind of reputation. And so, of course, all that did was enhance his reputation even more with me. And I've got a great little memory there of, you know, putting a name to a face, and really a world shaking talent. So that was a cool thing. And really watch any kind of Jodorowsky movie and you will never be disappointed. Next, I have, kind of going in the opposite direction, back to Hollywood, but nevertheless a kind of fringe Hollywood thing with a sort of independent filmmaker, and that is Hal Ashby. And that is this film, The Last Detail, from 1973. Also, all these films I'm going to be talking about, next 3 or 4 films, are going to be from 1973. If you're a Jack Nicholson fan, which I am, kind of up to a point. I mean, he made some kind of films that were a little questionable later on, but all he had to do was kind of crack his smile, and he went, okay, got my money's worth. But he always brought something to whatever he was doing. And a lot of times that was pure theatrical genius. And this is one of those movies. This is a great little set piece. It's got Randy Quaid in it, and it's got a really great score by the incredible Johnny Mandel. And I'll just read you the synopsis on the back of this in case you guys are not familiar with The Last Detail. Jack Nicholson stars fabulously in this Hal Ashby directed film about a tough sailor assigned to take a young doofus, Randy Quaid, to a naval prison. I wouldn't really say he's a doofus necessarily. I would just say that he's kind of ignorant and he's freshly in the Navy and makes a mistake that is going to cost him dearly. And it's more or less a kind of innocent mistake. And he just doesn't have an explanation for why he did it, other than it seemed like a good thing at the time. And it's a completely innocuous and absolutely innocent, virtually childish mistake. But he's not really a doofus. I would say he's just really the picture of innocence and lack of experience in life. I think he's supposed to be even maybe 18 or 19. Anyway, also starring Otis Young as the third member of the nautical trio, the sterling screenplay by Robert Towne, who also wrote Chinatown and The Godfather, and music by Johnny Mandel. And the great thing about these Twilight Time versions of these movies, if you can get them, is they have isolated music scores that you can listen to, which I really appreciate, because it really makes the music more intense without the visuals to basically pull you away from them, although they are really complementary. So this is one of the great things about this film, is it's a really small ensemble piece. It is literally three guys for the majority of the movie, and it's not boring for a second. And there are some really, really cool scenes in this. And basically, you've just got Jack Nicholson just in this role that's tailor made for him. I mean, this is really, if you're a Nicholson fan, you won't be disappointed by this. And he's everything you'd want him to be in it. I mean, from the kind of mystified at just the idiocy of a bureaucracy that basically the Navy has, to just basically, being astounded at just life in general and the way people behave. But he plays a member, him and Otis Taylor play a member of the Shore Patrol, and they're escorting Randy Quaid to prison. And this movie is basically the last 3 or 4 days, since Jack Nicholson is basically the boss of the Shore Patrol. He just kind of goes, well, we're just going to say we missed the train or whatever. And once again, this is stuff that could not happen now, because it's in the vacuum of before the internet. So you get to see people just kind of going AWOL and going, well, we're just going to riff on this a little bit. And nobody's going to know what we did. And we're going to have kind of a pact between us. And we're just going to do this other thing. And so this is a really cool, kind of reminds me of Cassavetes movies in a way, where you've just got this small core of people and you enter their universe and what they think is important. And it's a really cool movie. They don't really make movies like this anymore. And I think they probably have to have a car chase. I think there's even just in writing a script, it's basically every certain amount of pages, you've got to have X, Y, and Z happen, or else it needs to be brought to the committee and they need to have a big conversation about why you didn't have a car chase or some kind of escalation happening. So anyway, next, also in 1973, is this movie, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. And this is a Sam Peckinpah film. And this is great. This is one of my favorite Westerns ever. Sam Peckinpah was a fan of Westerns, obviously made quite a few of them, or lots of his films take place in the West, if not maybe all of them even. I'm trying to think of one that doesn't. Straw Dogs doesn't, but it's more or less kind of a Western that takes place in Cornwall. So this is one of his great westerns, and this is a movie that wasn't a big hit when it came out, kind of bombed, and then just kind of disappeared. Didn't get a lot of replays, would virtually never show up in repertory cinemas. I don't think I think maybe I saw a really, really terrible version of this, possibly in the late 80s at the National Film Theater in the UK or something. Just a really ratty, horrible print of it, just completely beat up and kind of pink. But this has been done properly. And even the DVD of it when it came out was a ratty looking, terrible DVD. But this has been restored properly and it's got this is kind of the version that's the fullest version because this is another one of those films where they just kept taking pieces and pieces out of it to make it short enough to make it more palatable. And then they eventually just gave up. And what we were left with was just this really sort of horrible, disjointed version of this movie. But it's got a lot of really great people in it. It's got James Coburn. Kristofferson plays Billy the Kid. And of course, I think he was in um, Bring Me That of Alfredo Garcia also, and some other Sam Peckinpah movies. He's in Convoy. He became kind of a Sam Peckinpah regular. This also has Slim Pickens, another Sam Peckinpah regular, and also Harry Dean Stanton is in it too. And I think L.Q. Jones, like all these guys that are usually in Sam Peckinpah movies. And it's also got a great, great score by Jerry Fielding, I think, and also Bob Dylan. And there's really a great backstory about Bob Dylan and Sam Peckinpah, where Sam Peckinpah was just completely unaware of Bob Dylan, and somehow some of his songs got brought to Sam Peckinpah's attention when maybe the studio or the producer was thinking of a way to maybe make the movie a little bit more high profile. And Sam Peckinpah was just kind of going, I don't know, this guy, he writes songs, whatever, which seems amazing, but Peckinpah was just not, he was not paying attention to that kind of stuff. And Jerry Fielding, who had done quite a few Sam Peckinpah movies by this point, the composer, didn't really get along with Bob Dylan and was kind of going, I don't even see the point for doing this, but whatever, okay, let's do that. And Bob Dylan started writing songs from scratch. And then after some meetings with Sam Peckinpah, Sam Peckinpah took a liking to Bob Dylan and said, well, why don't you come down to Mexico and just hang around? And then before he knew it, he was actually in the movie, hanging around in the movie. I think he plays a character called Nobody, which of course is another kind of existential, metaphysical Bob Dylan trick, because of course, Bob Dylan, the name Bob Dylan is in fact a metaphysical and existential trick, because his real name is Robert Zimmerman, I believe. And so Robert Zimmerman became Bob Dylan so that he didn't have the name of Robert Zimmerman to hold him back. And he also got to do personal tribute to Dylan Thomas. And then Bob Dylan, who was nobody before he was made Bob Dylan, actually got to be somebody in a Sam Peckinpah movie by playing a character called Nobody. So that's how Bob Dylan rolled. And I think it was a great inside joke. And I really never cared for the song Knocking on Heaven's Door really, or all of the music related to the soundtrack to Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. Never listened to it very much. I was kind of, it just sounds sort of, kind of throwaway as far as Bob Dylan's concerned, but that is Bob Dylan's greatest trick is sounding throwaway, and then later you're listening, you get caught off guard and you go, "Oh, I see. Hey, Sebastian Galliano, good to see you." So that's what happened to me with the soundtrack to that. And seeing this movie was so rare that I was usually paying more attention to the visuals, and the soundtrack was kind of take it or leave it. But on this new restored version, incidentally, this is a 4K version, so they went all the way with it, and it looks absolutely incredible now. You can see all kinds of stuff you can never see before. But the scene where knocking on heaven's door is played has this depth now. It's a scene with Slim Pickens, who I've spoken about before, and it really just is like the perfect thing for that scene. You can't imagine anything else being in there. So I'm not going to spoil it for you, but if you like westerns and you're a Sam Peckinpah fan, this is great, and one of the greatest westerns um, ever made, really. And it's never looked better. So this is awesome. Next, also 1973, we have Vault of Horror. And Vault of Horror is another one of those Amicus films. The British production company that made a sequence of horror films that had 2 or 3 or 4 stories in them, depending on which one it was. This is nicely combined with Tales from the Crypt. So on here, you're basically getting 6 little movies for the price of 2. And Vault of Horror is a great one. It says this is another film that you could only see on terrible VHS copies. I did see this in a movie theater in the early 70s. All of these movies came through El Paso at the time because they knew they could at least get a week's worth of movie going, if not a little bit more, because a lot of people like myself wanted to see these twice. But often they'd open on a Friday, the weekends would be busy, they'd go through to the next Friday or next Wednesday even, then they'd be gone. And so you couldn't ever see them again until VHS came along, and then you could see them, although kind of dreadful sort of versions. But at the time, actually, VHS looked better than regular TV, except I think in the UK and in Japan, where their television broadcast, I think, had something like 650 lines of resolution instead of maybe 400, 425 for NTSC. So Vault of Horror, really cool. And says on this version of it, available uncut for the first time, 5 unsuspecting hotel guests step into an elevator which leads them to an underground vault. Trapped with no way out, each guest shares a gruesome tale of an encounter with death. So a lot of these omnibus films or Amicus films were like that. A group of unwary travelers find themselves in a situation trapped together where there's usually a protagonist, a monk, or somebody kind of saying, are you sure you don't know why you're here? And so then they would go, well, last thing I remember was, and they would tell a story. Sebastian says Betamax Res was kind of neat. Yeah, I mean, I think it was the same resolution as VHS, because the TVs were the TVs. There was no such thing as high res. There was no 1080p. So, like I said, I mean, basically they had to conform to whatever broadcast standard was available for the country that you were in. Um, I remember when I would go and visit my dad and stepmother and my grandparents in the UK, thinking that the TV there looked a lot better. And it did because it was higher resolution. So that was a cool thing. Next, okay, here's a very, very classic 1973 film that a lot of you guys are going to know, which is an undeniable masterpiece and classic, and that is The Wicker Man. And this is probably the birth of kind of folk horror, I would say. And this one's had a really nice restoration. It's on 4K. They've done nice cover art for it. Looks really good. And I think maybe this was possibly one or two of the only films this director, Robert Hardy, made. It's got Britt Ekland. I'm not sure if she was married to Peter Sellers yet. Ingrid Pitt and Christopher Lee as Lord Summerisle, and Edward Woodward as the constable who wants to get to the bottom of things. Takes place in the Scottish Isles, and Edward Woodward is a policeman that's been sent out to an island to locate a missing girl. And this turns out to be an extremely complex plot that lures him there. And what happens to him there? Christopher Lee plays a kind of aristocrat named Lord Summerisle, who, in the tradition of his forefathers, is at one with nature, worships the land, and has kind of a pagan fertility cult going on the island. And the way that it's done is great. You have no idea what's coming. Not going to spoil it for anybody who hasn't watched it yet. Sometimes I make assumptions that everybody's seen these, but this one is an amazing, amazing journey. And if you can see it in a cinema, I recommend doing that. And first time I got to see this, I think, was at a midnight showing in Los Angeles, maybe in the later 70s. And it was great. Yes.
Should ask if they still watch DVDs or they stream only.
Okay. Well, you probably heard that question from the producer, which was how many of you guys stream versus watching physical media? So I like physical media because, like, when you get something like this, you just get endless amounts of extras that are great. You get all of these vintage interviews. A lot of the times, the interviews are conducted on set with the director. Usually, they seem to be actors because the actors have more time to sit around waiting, whereas the directors do not have any time because they still have to be directing. You still buy DVDs. Cool. Well, they've never looked better. And the launch of Blu-ray was a little sketchy, but obviously it became massive. When it was done properly, it was done properly really well. And 4K is kind of the same thing. It was a sketchy rollout. Nobody knew if it was going to take on or not. But the fact that they're doing this kind of thing is awesome. And the players are cheap, and you can get them from Target or wherever else.
And then another question, does anyone still have a place where they can rent videos in their city? And do they rent videos in their city?
Well, you heard the question. So you guys still have video stores? I really like the video stores. They were great. And I think seems like COVID really killed the remaining ones, but they're starting to reopen. We're fortunate to be here in Austin, Texas, where people love that kind of stuff. There was a I Love Video, uh, not really a chain, but there was a few of those stores, and there was another one called Vulcan. I think Vulcan is reopened.
To like 2018.
Vulcan stayed open a long time, and they were opened by people who really loved movies. So they had like big Criterion sections, they had big foreign sections. They even had pornography sections. They had extreme sections, like for all the really weird, frightening, nasty Japanese movies like Guinea Pig and horrible things like that. So um, Sebastian Galliano says no rentals at all, not even for streaming, or your town doesn't have it. Oh, your town doesn't have it. Yeah, that's sad because I mean, it's a cool thing. And then, oh, you're out of the USA, right? And where are you again? Sorry, I can't remember. But when I lived in London, there were plenty of places to go and rent videos from. And even the town outside of London I lived in before I left even had a small uh, video rental place in it. But this is a cool thing and it's a great way to meet people. And we're also fortunate here in Austin because our public library has a vast section of things that you can rent, all kinds of media. And it's mainly Blu-rays now. I think they still have some DVDs, tons of CDs, but it's great that public libraries are doing this. And I think they even have like streaming rental situations through various platforms. Um, anyway, Wicker Man, awesome. And if you can see it in a movie theater, run to watch it. Next, 1973 also. Actually, I don't own a copy of this film, but it's Mean Streets, and it is Martin Scorsese's second feature, I think. Oh, wow, you're in Colombia. Okay. Bogota. I don't think I've mentioned that before. No, you haven't, but always wanted to visit Colombia. And it seems like a great place. The music is really cool. My wife is a dance instructor and loves the cumbia, which of course I believe,
So yeah, salsa
and salsa, which I think both originate in Colombia, correct?
originate in Colombia, but they definitely do.
They're big in Colombia anyway. So, and then also, yeah, Colombia, what a great, interesting history, fantastic country. The cuisine is amazing. I mean, seems like a cool place. Some great libraries here with DVDs and even some films. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And I appreciate you sitting in and nice to have somebody from South America here. So Scorsese, Mean Streets, this is I was talking about Last Detail being an ensemble movie, but Mean Streets is very much one, and Scorsese loves the ensemble movie trope. Lots of his movies have groups of 4 or 5 people doing all kinds of crazy stuff through it, having experiences together. And I think that holds true for a lot of his films. And Mean Streets is one of those great gangster films. And it's not a big mafioso film. It's just about kind of small time hoods, possibly in Brooklyn or Manhattan. And um, the uh, backdrop for it is pretty much you've got people that are running these small time organizations, and Harvey Keitel is one of them. And then you've got the people below them who are kind of more or less sort of the screw ups who are not taking the thing seriously. Robert De Niro plays a supreme screw up in that little gang. And the opening sequence of the film, where they introduce all the characters, is really great. Scorsese does this super cool thing, which by now has become completely iconic and much borrowed for films since then. This is going back over 50 years ago at this point, where he introduces a character, you see the character doing something, it frame phrases it, and just puts the name underneath with the character making some kind of really specific face. And so Mean Streets is a super cool movie, and it's really about honor amongst thieves and what happens when how far can the honor go and how far will you stick up for people who are going awry, no matter how many times you tell them, look, this is your last chance. I'm getting told you're going to have to behave now. Please, please don't make me do it. And so the whole film is basically spent with a couple of people going, please, come on, please, I'm begging you, please, please. And it almost just becomes this point of comedy because it does go to the very, you've got a solid 75 minutes of a couple of characters, one of which is going, look, I'm telling you, this is the last time. And then the other guy going, but come on, I'm doing my best. Oh man, oh man. It's just this, it's very, very New York. And Scorsese, being from New York, knows these kind of characters really well. And this is just a timeless movie about honor amongst thieves. And it's a classic one. And it's really almost more black comedy than anything else. And Scorsese nails it. All the actors really nail it too. And you can just watch this film endlessly and you never get tired of the kind of shtick that goes on and the instant escalation that people have. Just going from, oh, but you're an idiot. Didn't you know that? And the other guy going, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And of course, if you know Goodfellas and Raging Bull and some of Scorsese's other movies, there's that kind of escalatory thing that goes on where somebody even misunderstands something. And then the next thing you know, people are either beating the crap out of each other or pulling guns out and going, did I hear what I think you just said? You know, and there's just this great, great hilarity in it. And at the same time, it's completely dangerous. So it's dangerous and hilarious at the same time. And really just, you get completely absorbed in this level of human behavior. And it's really cool. And it's really done well. And yeah, I'm not sure if Scorsese ever made a straight up comedy. Maybe possibly the closest is The King of Comedy. Anybody else thinks something is straight comedy? I don't think he's gone there with it. But certainly he's like Kurosawa or Fellini in the sense that he can have highly comedic elements within a film that are really just, I mean, it is pure comedy or whatever. But it's managed with pathos and, you know, poignant moments. And he's just got everything. It's a rich kaleidoscope. And a lot of times it just involves a few people and it's super cool. Scorsese never fails on that level to present life in all of its complexity with all different kinds of emotions stirred up in there, much like Kurosawa or Bergman or Fellini. So Mean Streets is great. If you've never watched it, take a look. You won't be disappointed. Next, now we're actually out of 1973. It's only taken 5 hours of talking to get out of 1973. But that's what I'm doing. So anyway, Sebastian says, whatever you want to let me know. You got some wild fans in Medellin. Um, okay. That sounds like something I'd want to definitely check out. When I hear about wildness in Medellin, I don't know what that means. And it could mean a little touch of like the orchid powder or something. I don't really know, but I'll take your word for it and it sounds good. So definitely not afraid to go there because it seems like such a cool place. But thank you. I appreciate that. Sebastian also says he has a great sense of humor, but still not really comedy. No, it's not. I mean, in the same way that life itself is not really comedy. We can have comedic moments, but most of the time it's something else, right? And it's not, comedy is kind of performative, and I'm not sure if performing comedy in life is usually successful. It seems to be usually um, unintentional. I'm not sure. I will check out Medellin. Like, thank you. Absolutely. And also like the folk music too, like the kind of um, indigenous folk music of that stuff. I like that stuff. I think there's like some big drum. I think there's even a big drum band that I follow on YouTube. And it's just these people with like 35 drummers, and they get out there in the streets and just do these super cool drum performances. And there's men and women in it. They all look like they're maybe in their 20s and 30s. But yeah, okay. Sounds interesting. South America in general. I mean, I haven't never been to South America. All the culture there seems really interesting and cool. So I'd love to visit one there. Seems really interesting and cool. So I'd love to visit one day. Let's see. A Woman Under the Influence. That's this film by John Cassavetes with the great Gina Rowlands. And I'll read you the synopsis on the back here quickly. This uncompromising portrait of domestic turmoil details the emotional breakdown of a suburban housewife and her family's struggle to save her from herself. Gina Rowlands and Peter Falk give unforgettably harrowing experiences as a married couple deeply in love, but unable to express their ardor in terms that the other can understand. This landmark American film is perhaps the most beloved work from the extraordinary John Cassavetes. So this is an amazing film, harrowing watch. This is not a good time watch. Um, it's kind of like you're just going through an experience with them. If you've ever known any couples that are completely volatile and you've been friends with both of them, this is a film to watch, and you have really, really great performances. If you've only ever known Peter Falk from the TV series Columbo, you've got to see him in this because he will definitely make you think about him as an actor in a completely different way. And this comes in a cool little Cassavetes box set where you get, I think, 4 or 5 films from right around the same time. So really awesome film. Once again, little ensemble cast, and this is amazing. Really good. Next, and I think this firmly comes under the heading of comedy, and for obvious reasons, and you guys are going to know this one. Blazing Saddles. And this is a really good film. It's made by the great um, Mel Brooks, and it's got this kind of thing going on in it, as you can see from the back, where somebody can't get a horse, so they decide they want to ride a bull instead. And it also has Harvey Korman, Madeline Kahn, and it's got Slim Pickens is in this also. So amazingly, Slim Pickens must have made Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, and then went and made Blazing Saddles. And Blazing Saddles is filled with great double entendres. It's written by Mel Brooks, and also Slim Pickens is really wonderful in this. And he just seems to have really amazing lines in whatever movie he's in. The director goes, okay, now we got him in here. We're going to get him to do this. And Slim Pickens is just all in. He will do anything. And I'm not even going to say some of the lines that are in this movie, but they are notoriously famous lines. And this is purely a Western. And once again, Mel Brooks is kind of a tricky person for me because a lot of stuff is just, he almost has a kind of vaudevillian approach towards comedy in film, which is basically, we know these jokes are terrible. We're going to tell them anyway. And then the whole point of doing this is the reactions that we're going to create as a result of doing these really, really terrible jokes. And these are kind of clams, they're jokes that just fall flat. And they're more or less part of the script, having this terrible comedy thing going on where the characters, they know it's terrible, they're doing it anyway, and they just kind of stand there and go, it's called corpsing is when you can't stop laughing. This is like the opposite of corpsing, where it's just, I don't know what it's called when it's dead and you do it anyway. You know what that's called, producer? But it's kind of an old vaudevillian thing. And a lot of times they would do it as a means to just basically end their act. They might be completely hilarious. They say something that falls dead, and then literally there would be a hook that just pulled somebody off the stage by their neck. So Mel Brooks does this in all of his films. There's always jokes that are terribly bad. They're in there on purpose, and they're in every single Mel Brooks film. And it's great because the characters, you can see that they know that the terrible thing is approaching. It approaches, it's executed. Then you have the reaction, and then they just move right along to something that's possibly actually funny. So it's an interesting technique. Mel Brooks is probably the only filmmaker that can get away with doing that. And there's a fourth wall thing that goes on also sometimes. And sometimes it's to the point where every single character just looks beyond the fourth wall. And they just do that. And it's odd and it's strange. And it kind of stops me from fully enjoying Mel Brooks comedies completely. But comedy is tough. Comedy might be tougher than drama, I think, really, in a lot of ways. So I'm not the only person that thinks that, I think. And I think there's even great comedians who are just, they've said in their careers, comedy is really, really, really difficult and really unforgiving because, I mean, bad drama just kind of goes, well, wasn't quite that dramatic, but you never get an entire cast going, well, that wasn't dramatic. Okay, let's move along to something more dramatic. It just ends up on the floor. They try and replace it with something that works. Anyway, I think this might be the only Mel Brooks film that I own, and it's probably 75% because it's a Western, 20% because it has Slim Pickens in it, and the rest of it for the actual writing. So there's that. Next, Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. possibly the best film title ever. If you guys can think of a better film title, then Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. Should throw it out there. This is a pretty awesome one. Do you know one, producer?
Think about it.
I mean, it's the best one for me, of course. I mean, for some people, Bambi might be the best one. For other people, Star Wars 27, Another New Hope might be a better one.
What's that one called? Mother.
Oh yeah, what is that?
Or Mother.
That is it David Lynch?
Herzog.
It's a Warner Herzog David Lynch collaboration, supposedly. No, oh brother, brother, where art thou? But that's named after an old Depression era song. No, it was called Son, my son, what have ye done? Right? That's a good one. My son, what have ye done?
Talking about.
This is a better one. So if you guys don't know this one, this is another Sam Peckinpah movie. This is the one that he made after Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. It's got the great Warren Oates in it, one of my favorite actors. This does not have Slim Pickens in it, and I'll give you the quick synopsis of it. Reviled upon its release, like all Sam Peckinpah movies, reviled upon its release, reassessed today as a masterpiece. I always thought it was a masterpiece. Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia is Pantheon director Sam Peckinpah's nihilistic yet poetic tale of Bernie, Warren Oates' iconically great, a wastrel, sometimes piano player in the wilds of New Mexico. He and his beautiful, tragic lover, the fragile, strong Zella Vega, stumble across one last perilous chance at happiness in order to claim more money than they've ever dreamed of. All they have to do is retrieve the head of a wanted man, and all the money they've ever dreamed of is like $25,000. But in Mexico, that was a lot of money at the time, and I think it was even a lot of money, 1974. But the path to their ultimate escape is littered with dangers, some of course of the fatal variety. Gorgeously supported by Jerry Fielding's poignant score, available on Twilight Time release as an isolated track. So this is awesome, and it's great, and I don't know much else what to say about it other than it's a story of a man who's, like they said on the back, has a last chance at happiness. And that once he starts to get his hands on the item, which in fact is Alfredo Garcia's head, then half the movie is him driving around Mexico in a car with his girlfriend or new wife, with a head in a bag and trying to keep that thing cool so that it doesn't attract vermin. But yeah, this has got to be one of the great sort of existentialist movies of forever, really. I mean, this is a movie that will be great forever. And this is another movie that I didn't get to probably see into the 80s because you could not find this movie to watch it. Even if you lived near a video store, chances are 9 out of 10, they did not have this movie. And if they did have it, it was basically just completely beat on a VHS or whatever. So it's a great film. Next, 1974 also, and I just mentioned Robert Townes, who wrote the script for The Last Detail. He also wrote the script for this movie, Chinatown, which is a great movie by Roman Polanski. I think it's a movie that he made after Rosemary's Baby. Somebody might be able to connect. Somebody might be able to correct me on that. Once again, Jack Nicholson, Faye Dunaway. It's got Roman Polanski in a great cameo in his own film. And also it's got John Huston in it as kind of the alpha male in this kind of plot of corruption to divert Los Angeles's water supply for whatever reason. I'm just going to let you guys discover that if you haven't watched this great modern gangster noir corruption film from the 1970s. Everybody's excellent in it. Amazing screenplay. Iconic film score by the great Jerry Goldsmith, who did all kinds of fantastic film scores, starting in the late 50s all the way up until I think the 90s. I think Jerry Goldsmith did the great score for Total Recall, the Verhoeven version, of course. So this film is fantastic. This film will never get old also, and has a twist that emerges about 3/4 of the way through the film that is devastating, weird, and definitely R-rated and not for kids. This is not happy-go-lucky gangster. This is layer upon layer of gangster hideousness on a level where absolute power corrupts absolutely. And if you haven't seen Chinatown, got to watch it. It's a great one. Put it on your list. Once again, I will have a list of all of these, and there will be chapters related to all of these. So, speaking previously of Warren Oates, I've got another Warren Oates film. Warren Oates in the 70s was just making movie after movie that was great. He didn't make a bad, I don't think he's ever actually made a bad film. Some of the films were better than others, but he's always great in whatever he's in. And this is probably one that you might not have heard of, even if you are a Warren Oates fan. And this film is a film called Cockfighter. And this is one of my favorite films. It's directed by Monty Hellman, who also made the film I was talking about in the earlier 70s, maybe 72 or something, 71. Monty Hellman made a film called Two Lane Blacktop with Dennis, James Taylor, and
Hopper?
Dennis Wilson from the Beach Boys. And also it has Warren Oates in it. So this is a second movie that Monty Hellman made with Warren Oates. And it's great. This is a movie that is only on DVD, and it is not streaming anywhere as far as I know. And on the back it says, Warren Oates stars in a controversial drama of the most brutal blood sport of all. And that is, in fact, cockfighting. I might beg to differ on that. I might think that possibly bullfighting might be the kind of worst, nastiest blood sport out there. Apart from just big game hunting, I want to consider that a blood sport. I don't know. So the synopsis on the back of this is Warren Oates stars as Frank Mansfield, a master cockfighter whose reckless behavior has cost him the blood sport's highest honor. Taking a vow of silence, he struggles to rebuild his career through the savage pits of the deep South. But in a world of mad gambles and broken dreams, some cockfighters are born to kill, while others only have a fighting chance at redemption. Warren Oates gives one of the greatest performances of his career in this controversial classic directed by acclaimed filmmaker Monty Hellman, Two Lane Blacktop, produced by Roger Corman and written by Charles Wilford, based on his powerful novel. Now, I haven't read the novel, but this is reminding me that might be a cool thing to read. And once again, like I mentioned, a cool thing about a lot of this media, for example, on the back of this, you get a documentary called War Notes Across the Border, and you also get an audio commentary on the entire film by Monty Hellman and production assistant Stephen Gatos, moderated by Dennis Bartok. I don't know if he's related to Bella Bartok. I would hope so. Then you also get a TV spot, you get radio spots, and you get talent bios. And I think this even has Harry Dean Stanton in it too. So you've got kind of Sam Peckinpah, Monty Hellman, actor crossover type stuff. Absolutely cool movie. Hunt this one up if you can. You won't be disappointed. And this is a great performance by Warren Oates, because he spends about 3/4 of the film saying nothing. And it doesn't sound that interesting, but it's great and worth checking out if you can find it. Next, and I think this is going to be the very last one that I do, from 1974. And that is taking kind of, we're sort of in the realm of exploitative type of stuff, of which the 70s were fantastic for. And we've got this film here, Foxy Brown, with Pam Grier. Pam Grier made a number of these movies in the 1970s, and she made them with Jack Hill, the director. And this one's a really good one. And they're all really good and really fun. It's got music by Willie Hutch. If you're a fan of 70s soul, you can listen to anything by Willie Hutch. It's recorded really nicely. Sounds are all beautiful. The vibe is great on the music. And this is a really awesome film. Pam Grier is great. I'll just read you the synopsis of this. If you guys haven't watched Pam Grier's 70s movies, these films are a hoot to watch. They've got comedic elements, they've got shootouts. Usually they've got Pam Grier slapping somebody around at some point, which is always good to see. And the synopsis for this is Foxy Brown is a whole lot of woman, and that's what the guy who plays her brother says. Incidentally, was played by the actor who played Huggy Bear on Starsky and Hutch. And it says she's a whole lot of woman and more. Just what you want to see. Seeking revenge for the murder of her government agent boyfriend, Foxy goes to any means necessary, even posing as a prostitute, to infiltrate a modeling agency that is a cover for a sex trafficking ring, to bring the killer to justice. So this is really fun watch. It's got great 70s styles. It's made obviously in 1974. So you've got all this cool decor, you've got cool music, cool cars. Um, Everybody looks amazing. The actors all just look like they're completely psyched to be in this movie. And Jack Hill is a great director, brings out the best in Pam Grier and the ensemble. This is kind of an ensemble cast. And he made a few other movies with Pam Grier also, and I will probably mention those as they are coming up. But the cover says everything. She's brown sugar and spice, but if you don't treat her nice, she'll put you on ice. She's the meanest chick in town. And she's also pretty nice too. So this is great. watch this for a hoot and for a laugh and just for fun and cool, groovy 70s vibes. And this kind of movie actually, I could not get into it when it showed. I remember these movies showing back when I was seeing all this other stuff. And because this was an R-rated film and it has some brief nudity in it and drug usage, so and a little bit of swearing. So nowadays this would probably be a PG-13 movie, but back then it was R-rated, which made me want to see it even more. And I think I suggested going to see this to my parents. Hey, Foxy Brown is on at the drive-in. Can we go and see that? No, I don't think we're going to see that. It's like, okay. They just weren't that cool. And I just never managed to get together with like a friend's older brother or sister to be able to sneak into the drive-in to watch it. But I can watch it all I want. So that's ending this week. And I hope you guys had a good time. Please remember to check out my Patreon page. I'm writing about my record collection here, and I'm also doing something called The Process, where I'm building a brand new project completely from scratch, talking about how I build tracks and write them at the same time. You could also send a direct donation now because I have a PayPal at me link, which is going to be below. You can also buy me a coffee, and remember to like and subscribe if you haven't. Appreciate all you guys being here. And of course, if you're here for the first time, check out all the previous Film Club episodes. We go all the way back to the 1920s. So I have films that are my favorites from the very birth of cinema all the way up to the 21st century. I think we did a 21st century one to begin with.
Probably do that one over again
Could probably do it over again.
because you could go through it more thoroughly.
And I could actually go through. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Great to see all you guys. I appreciate you being here and see you again. Have a great week and we will meet again. So thank you.